All right, good morning, CWA family. I am Elena Lopez. I am Deputy Director of Government Affairs here at CWA, and I have the pleasure of walking you through our worker power agenda. I know I'm the last person standing between you guys and lunch and lobbying, so I promise to keep this short and sweet. But we'll go through this quickly to talk about the bills that we have been talking about that are going to help our members, help us make sure we have a working democracy that truly represents the working class. So after the executive board asked us to develop an alternate vision to the current oligarchy, we reached out to you guys to figure out what matters most, right? We used your feedback from polls, worksite conversations, and our issue surveys to create this agenda that truly represents the working class majority. Our agenda is more than just a suite of bills. It's a real roadmap to build worker power, fight corruption, and make life more affordable. So, our agenda stands on 4 main pillars, and you can follow along in this sheet that you have in your lobby packets, right? It stands on 4 main pillars: securing good jobs and strong unions, ensuring affordable, reliable health care, stopping corporations from ripping us off, and ending corporate corruption of our political system. So let's dive in and talk about how we can fight back and win using this agenda. So for years, CWA members have faced constant attacks on our jobs, our benefits, and our unions. You guys are all aware of this. We are fighting greedy companies and corporate-backed politicians who want to weaken the middle class for their own short-term gain. But now is the time to go on the offense. We need bold policies that protect good jobs and give workers real power. So the first pillar of our agenda is the foundation of our work, right? Everything that we know as a union. It is good jobs and strong unions. So to build worker power, we need to overhaul labor laws in this country. So the bills that we have in this is, first and foremost, right, championing the PRO Act. We all know it. We all love it. This is landmark legislation that restores the fundamental right of workers to freely join a union. It cracks down on union busting by strengthening penalties for companies that illegally fire workers for organizing. It bans mandatory captive audience meetings, prevents workers' misclassification, protects our right to strikes, and establishes arbitration to help workers secure their first contract. But that's not all. Oh, sorry about that. We also care about the public sector, right? We're not just focused on the private sector. The Public Sector Freedom to Negotiate Act would set strong national standards so that all state, local, and municipal workers can organize, bargain together, and use payroll deductions for dues. If passed, public employees everywhere will have the same union rights no matter where they live. And we know that our biggest, right, leverage is withholding our labor. The Empowering Striking Workers Act ensures that workers on strike or locked out by their employers are eligible for unemployment benefits 14 days after 14 days. No one should have to choose between standing up for their rights and feeding their families. We also want to say that protecting American jobs from protecting unions means protecting American jobs from harmful corporate taxes like outsourcing and unchecked automation. So to tackle these issues, we have a list of bills. The No Tax Breaks for Outsourcing Act would take away tax incentives that make it profitable for companies to move jobs overseas. If passed, it would deter outsourcing and help preserve American jobs. The No Robots Bosses Act would also stop employers from relying only on automated decision-making to make life-altering employment decisions like hiring, like firing. Every decision would need real human input and oversight. And I'll say, for our call center members, right, the Keep Call Centers in America Act is especially critical. It requires businesses to notify the Department of Labor before relocating a call centers overseas, creates a public list of employers that have offshore jobs, and requires that call center work performed on a federal contract be performed in the US. Most importantly, it lets consumers know where their agent is, get transferred to a US agent if they prefer, and choose to speak to an actual representative instead of AI, right? Because we know AI is coming for our jobs. So with that, we have our second pillar, which is tackling a crisis that we all feel: unaffordable healthcare. Right now, widespread losses of health coverage are driving up employers' insurance costs. This creates a toxic environment at the bargaining table, making it incredibly difficult for us to protect our health benefits without being forced to give up pay raises or other benefits, right? Healthcare should not be a bargaining chip used to suppress our wages. We need real solutions to bring down healthcare costs for everyone. So, to fix this broken system, we have a couple of bills. The first one is the Lowering Drug Costs for Americans Families Act. This is a massive, transformative bill. It would let Americans with private insurance benefit from Medicare's drug price negotiations and inflation rebates. It increases the number of negotiated drugs to $50 a year, caps yearly out-of-pocket prescription costs to $2,000, and limits insulin costs to $35 a month for people with private insurance, so not just Medicare recipients. Next, we have the Medical, Dental, Hearing, and Vision Expansion Act. It's a mouthful, I promise I didn't name it, but it fills big gaps in senior care, right? It expands Medicare to fully cover dentures, eye exams, glasses, hearing aids, and routine dental care like x-rays, fillings, and cleanings, because we need to take care of our seniors. Lastly, we have the Protecting Healthcare and Lowering Cost Act, which would undo the harmful cuts that we saw to Medicaid and the ACA under the One Big Beautiful Bill. When hospitals are forced to absorb the cost of uninsured patients, those expenses actually get passed on to employer plans. By cutting down on this uncompensated care, this act protects union health plans and keeps costs low for working families. We're actually going to have a panel tomorrow to talk about healthcare where we'll dive into this a little more. Sorry about that. Next, we have stopping corporations from ripping us off. That's our third pillar. It's all about economic fairness. Every worker in America knows what it's like, right, to see their paychecks stretch thinner and thinner while corporate executives and billionaires make record profits. Inflation is not just an accident. In many cases, it's driven by corporate greed. So to do this, we need strong federal protections that make sure that we get fair wages, fair prices, and can keep more of our hard-earned money. So this is how we're going to stop corporations from taking advantage of us. First, as you heard Congressman Gassar say, we're going to update the Fair Labor Standards Act to make sure that you get double your hourly rate rather than the outdated time and a half for overtime. That's exciting. Secondly, we're going to pass the Raise the Wage Act. This would raise the federal minimum wage to $17 an hour by 2030 and tie it to inflation, so it keeps up with the cost of living. With a higher wage floor, union workers will be in a stronger negotiating position to negotiate for better pay. To address high costs, we're also going to look at the Price Gouging Prevention Act, which would let the Federal Trade Commission and state attorney generals go after companies that charge excessive prices while requiring public companies to be fully transparent about their pricing strategies. Similarly, we have the Stop AI Price Gouging and Wage Fixing Act. It would stop companies from using AI to unfairly raise prices or lower wages. This protects workers and consumers by making sure AI can't secretly change pay or prices without you knowing. We also support the American Energy Independence and Affordability Act. It would bring back tax incentives for clean energy manufacturing, which would help our IUE domestic manufacturing folks, create good jobs, and help lower utility and vehicle bills for everyone. And so, last but not least, right, I think you've heard, we can have the best policy ideas in the world, but they do not matter if we cannot fix our political system, our broken system. The billionaires and massive corporations are allowed to pour hundreds of millions of dollars into electing anti-worker corporate candidates. This dark money effectively silences the voices of everyday workers at the ballot box. If we want to pass labor reform, healthcare reform, lower costs, we first need big political changes that give power back to the people. So our last pillar focuses on ending corporate corruption of our political system. This one's a popular one with folks. First, we need to clean up Washington with the Restore Trust in Congress Act. This stops members of Congress, their spouses, and their dependents from trading individual stocks. If you are making the laws, you should not profit from insider knowledge, right? I know folks like that. Secondly, as we heard Congressman Raskin mention, we need to protect voting rights, right? We need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. It requires states and localities with a history of discrimination to obtain federal approval before changing their voting laws. It establishes specific criteria to identify voting rights violations and requires officials to publicly announce any voting changes at least 180 days before an election. Finally, we have the Freedom to Vote Act, right? It would fight voter suppression. It ends partisan gerrymandering. It raises penalties for voter intimidation. It fights election misinformation, makes Election Day a national holiday, and guarantees voting and mail-in balance, so voting becomes more accessible and fairer for everyone. In particular, these last two bills would help end the nonsense that we're seeing come out of the southern states right now, where they're trying to stop Black people from voting. So, with that, right, our worker power agenda is this bold plan that recognizes our fights at work, at the bargaining table, in healthcare, and at the ballot box are all connected. When we protect the right to organize, lower healthcare costs, and stop corporate price gougings, and fight political corruption, we can build an America where working families thrive, not just get by. So, let's come together, take action, talk to your coworkers about this working power agenda. Contact your representatives. I know many of you are going to go lobby on the Hill. That's great. Keep talking to them. Get involved in our campaigns. Get involved in our mobilization efforts. Together, if we act together, we can turn this agenda into a reality. If you have any questions about this agenda, please come find me. I'll be around. Thank you.